Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, December 17th, 2018. Thank you for joining us. We hope everybody had a great weekend. I know we enjoyed a little time off. Taking a look at our solar speeds right now, we're sitting at a 416.4 kilometers per second with a density of 6.4. Now I can tell you today they are expecting an increase in solar wind speed. It has went up just a little bit, not a lot to be really talking about. We are blank today with 0 sunspots, giving us one day at 207 spotless day for 2018, 59% of the year so far without spots. Now, TCI, that is continuing to drop. And the reason why we started watching this about a month ago on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. When we started watching this, we were somewhere around 4.5. That's 45 billion watts. Now, today, the TCI index sits at 31 billion watts. The last time we did a broadcast, I believe we were somewhere around 35 billion watts. So this is dropping a little faster here in the last few weeks. We've seen the drop come a little more accelerated, and we'll take a look at a chart here that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at right now. And if you zoom out and look at the big picture, we haven't even begun the consistency of cold for this upcoming minimum. In other words, this is just now falling to those levels for the TCI index. So 2009 we recorded a record of, I think it was 20 billion watts, 20.5 billion watts, and right now we're not too far from that particular reading, and we're not even at the beginning of this next minimum, which is scheduled to start around 2019-2020. So interesting stats to keep an eye on as well. Take a look at KP indices. We're sitting at a 2, and I wanted to take a quick look at the SDO for today, as that is a shot from December 4th. Bear with me, folks. This is what you get for doing things on the fly like this. We are having some technical difficulties on the SDO in motion. I'll just go back to the still shot here on SPACEWEATHER.com. And as we see that coronal hole that they are highlighting, they're expecting a possible minor geomagnetic activity today, December 17th. So we will see if anything actually becomes of that. And also wanted to monitor our possible next sunspot, which won't be for quite some time. Actually, we're talking, it's on the exact opposite side just about of where we are, and also located in a more southerly region than the last few that we've seen. There she is right there. That's a mighty big active region. That is on the far eastern limb of our sun, and we will continue to monitor that, and that could be the next sunspot. And that is, if all holds together, this should be a sunspot, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere just barely after the new year. It's possible we'll see it on the eastern limb before the first of the year, but if I'm not mistaken, I think this will be a 2019 sunspot and will continue to be in the cycle 24 region. Now we had an increase of TSI, a jolt, should we say, on December, looks like the 8th, December 8th, 2018, with a reading of 1360.7283, and that's quite a significance of a jump, considering we had a reading on the just earlier that day of 1360.65. Now, we all know watching this, we don't see decreases in TSI much larger. Actually, we had a pretty low reading on the 7th, 1360.57. That's not real low, but compared to what we're used to seeing, it doesn't drop that quick, that fast. So interesting to see what kind of numbers we're going to have, as that is a very, very sudden jolt. And I'm curious to see if that lines up around the same time of that minor B flare that we had from the sun, as we had a sunspot turning away from Earth. So I'll have to correlate my research and take a look at that and see if that matches up or not. Violent eruption at Soputan volcano, alert level raised to red in Indonesia. This intense eruptive phase started on the North Sulawesi Soputan volcano on December 15th. During the initial phase of the eruption, ash cloud was not visible due to heavy fog. Soputan Volcano Observatory reported immediately after the eruption began and raised the aviation color from to code orange. 2 hours later, we could see the summit, and eruption was visible with ash plume of around 9,800 feet of the summit, and more than 15.7 on the maximum on that particular ash cloud. So almost 16,000 feet above sea level was that last ash cloud. But then on the 15th at 21:54 UTC time, they raised the aviation color from orange to red because we had an estimate of an ash cloud of around 28,000. So this continued to grow, and here's some pictures right here. I want to thank the watchers. Well above the cloud deck, we see this ash plume. And remember, folks, we start seeing sunlight being blocked around the 50,000 mark of these ash plumes. So just barely under 30,000. Another strong eruption near Indonesia, continuing seismic and volcanic activity, which has been going on all year down there, of course. The volcano follows this year's trend of becoming more active. Monitoring the data between August and early October of 18 showed a significant increase. On October 3rd, 2016, the alert level was increased from a level 2 to a level 3. An eruption occurred on October 3rd and 4th in 2018. So watching this data right now for a possibility of eruption here in the next several days. We'll keep our eyes on this. Thanks again for the watchers, for some great content here, great footage, digging out pictures off of the internet, off of Twitter. And these are the best photos that we get really off of these news stories when it comes to the watchers. We're also talking about Twitter. It's almost like Twitter is the real time, and Watchers does a great job at gathering that information and getting it out to us. Speaking of volcanoes, we have another one to talk about. Now, this one was on December 15th. The Vanuatu Meteorology and Geohazards Department has raised the volcanic alert for Ambrym to level 3. The department reported December 15th. The eruption is taking place in the caldera area, and the danger zone for life safety is limited at the danger zone B, which is about 1.2 miles around Benbow and 4 kilometers, that's 2.5 miles around Ambrym craters, including Mabon, Mubawasi, and I am not going to attempt the other two. My goodness. We'll let you guys read that one. Observations and seismic data analysis performed on December 15th confirm a small-scale intra-caldera flank eruption near Ambrym crater starting at 6 local time. The activity consists of ongoing lava flows and lava fountains with ash and gas emissions. People from Ambrym and neighboring islands may view volcanic ash and gas plumes and hear volcanic eruptions. The VMGD said that the possibility for Ambrym volcano activity to escalate to the level of moderate eruption, which is level 4, is low for now. The alert level for Ambrym volcano has been at a level 2 since December 7th of 2017. What did we say? This jumped up to a 3. So we will continue to monitor this situation. It's been at a level 2 since last year this time, and this year now it's jumped up just a little bit more. All tourism agencies, local authorities, people of Ambrym, and the general public are reminded not to access the danger zone B, which is about 2 kilometers radius from Benbow and about 4 kilometers from Ambrym. In this area, volcanic ashes and gases may be unbearable. Villages of Ambrym may experience impacts of ash and gas plumes and acid rains, especially those exposed to prevailing trade winds directions. Again, we'll leave the link in the description. Thanks to the watchers again. And let's shoot our focus over to the west coast of the United States. Hefty Sierra snowpack more than doubles last year's totals. a survey has shown. Heavy storms in the Sierra from late November into early December have boosted statewide snowpack to more than 100% of normal for this time of year, according to the California Department of Water Resources. According to the most recent snow survey, snowpack as of last Wednesday stood at 106% of normal across the state and higher in some parts of the mountain range. The Central Sierra from Tahoe to Yosemite was 113% average of last Wednesday, and the South Sierra was 125% of average last Thursday, thanks to a huge storm that brought feet of snow to Mono County. It's more than double of last year's totals for the same time frame. Statewide snowpack was 50% of average or less by early of December 2017. And this month's snowpack may grow even more. Some rain and snow are forecast to continue near Tahoe on Monday, according to the National Weather Service. NASA satellite images show a snowless California as of late of November 20th, and by December 2nd, the Sierra was white-capped. And here we have images from Twitter and various sites across the social media platforms. Let's see if this shows us a time lapse of the snow caps. Here is a look at the storm that came in over the weekend. And I was hoping for a time lapse of the snow caps going from nothing to something. And here we go. So there's your time lapse here. That was as of November 18th, came to a close. The beginning of December. So just in 4 or 5 days, it went from nothing to this. We'll leave the link in the description. And since we're on the West Coast, we've got a major storm to talk about tonight. And let's take a look at our radar right now as we go to our National Weather Service radar. And as we see, the Northwest is getting pounded once again. Oregon, Washington. Some very heavy rain hitting the West Coast right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the article. The biggest storm of the season will slam the Northwest Oregon Monday night and Tuesday, bringing potential flooding and winds up to 70 miles per hour. The storm will hit the Oregon coast this evening, while the heaviest wind and rain will hammer the Willamette Valley overnight and Tuesday morning. It says here, we're a little concerned the heaviest rain could come during Tuesday morning commute in Portland and Salem. Says the National Weather Service meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Power outages and small-scale flooding are possible across the region, according to a wind advisory and flood watch issued for central Willamette Valley. The system is an atmospheric river bringing heavy moisture from the tropics. The relatively warm temperatures are likely to melt some snowpack. Now, this is bad news, okay? And I'll get into that here just in a minute. But let's talk more about this storm. It's hardest hit on the Oregon coast. On the coast, an area expected to be hit the hardest was Lincoln County, Newport, and Florence counties, which are expected to see high surf, winds, and flooding danger. Winds are forecasted to reach around 70 miles per hour, and high surf advisory will remain in effect. Now, I was looking at the map earlier today, and I saw waves 27, 32 feet in this west coast, in this general vicinity. People are really going to want to stay off the jetties, rocks, and beaches at the coast, National Weather Service meteorologist Laurel McCoy said. There will be very dangerous conditions. 3 to 6 inches of rain is forecasted for the coast, bringing flooding danger, particularly to the Wilson River and Tillamook, and also the Siletz River outside of Lincoln City. The flooding danger is projected to peak around noon on Tuesday before dropping back to normal levels by Wednesday. The good news is that the rivers are starting off lower than they normally be, says McCoy. We could still see some flooding issues, but it would be much worse if we were at normal depths right now on these rivers. Rainfalls around Salem expected to be 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain. The heaviest wind is expected overnight, while the heaviest rain could come Tuesday morning as well. And bad news for skiing, as this is what we're talking about. Temperatures will stay warm during the storm, with snow levels rising all the way up to 65 to 7,000 feet, McCoy said. That's bad news for local ski areas, which will get drenched in rain and likely lose a lot of accumulated snowpack. Oregon snowpack is already behind schedule at 49 to 59% of normal statewide. This is definitely not going to help our snowpack, McCoy said. Landslide warning on the south coast. A flash flood warnings in effect. Areas burned by the Klondike and Cheetah Bar wildfires in southwest Oregon. The National Weather Service warns that rock slides and debris flows possible during rainfall, reaching critical thresholds early Tuesday morning through Tuesday evening, the National Weather Service had warned. The areas burned are primarily east of Brookings, Gold Beach, Agnes, near the Calamapissis Wilderness. Hopefully Miss Sea Gypsy's in here to help with that, Rob. I'm sure you guys can correct me. Please get me hooked on phonics so I can pronounce these cities better and words in general. I'll leave a link in the description so you can read it and butcher it as well. But watch out, folks out there in the Northwest. Oregon especially, you guys are definitely getting the heaviest of the rainfall. Now, the most common storyline, I think, is that we saw so much snow in November. And then December kind of like had a lot of these predictions that we were going to get a lot of big snowstorms. And there was. North Carolina got record snows. There was areas that saw some snowfall, but not like we thought we were going to see considering how snowy November was. So December kind of pumped the brakes. But what does that mean for January? Because we're already starting to hear the grumblings of a nasty and bitter January. And this is a story that came out of a news station here in Indiana. It says, we really haven't gotten any snow this month. Our total is pretty sad by December standards, coming out at only under an inch of snow. And their usual normal at this time of year is 7.9 inches. That's a full 7 inches below where they should be. Even though there's some snow chances around Christmas, this will look like a dry December for snowfall and will most likely be nowhere near the 17.3 that we need to consider December for a normal month of snowfall. However, when taking a look back at the last 10 years or so, when we have Decembers with very little snowfall or hardly any snowfall at all, we have noticed a big uptick in snowfall for January. December itself has a wide range in totals over the past 10 years, but take a look at these 4 winter seasons, especially the last 2. They're talking about everything up till the 14 and 15 winter. And as you see, the months that we had lower snow totals in December, we tend to pick it up a little bit more in this little town here in Indiana. He says you can see the big increase when we have a dry December. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but there is some correlation between a dry December and a snowy January. So you want to stay ready for more snow come January. They're not guaranteeing it, but this meteorologist is convinced he likes the trend, and he's going to stay true to that. Now, if you've noticed, in January of 2009, we peaked at our most snowiest January in 2010. Now, significance of that is also the fact that we are now, take a look at December of 2009, going into January of 2010. This was supposed to be a colder, snowier winter during 2009 and 2010 due to the last solar minimum that we had. So interesting to see those numbers much lower for this December. So does that mean we see a lot more snow in January, or is it going to be a repeat of 2015? I'd love to see the 16 and 17 stats on this as well, but unfortunately that did not fit the agenda for this story. I'll leave the link in the description. You guys can take a look at it. And while we're talking about snow, we had some very heavy snow overseas. This is somewhere in Romania. And forgive me, I had to translate the article. I wasn't sure exactly where this area was, but County Council for Emergency Situations in Timis on Sunday voted the request of Chief of Timis County School Inspector to suspend courses in the county on school on Monday and Tuesday as a result of heavy snowfall. I read in other articles that we had over 25 to 28 inches of snowfall in this area in just a short amount of time. And folks, you can take a look. Now, these snow drifts are a little misleading, but we're talking about snowfall, then these drifts are over waist high for this individual who is walking down a sidewalk. So definitely appropriate to call school off, but also there's been a lot of snow in this particular part of the world as well. I can't think of the other town or the other city that was affected by heavy snow just recently, but if you guys go to severe-weather.eu, they have lots of European snowstorm coverage, European everything, obviously. It's a European weather site. But there was a video that I saw of snowfall coming from the same region, and they were calling the snowflakes as big as handkerchiefs. And folks, they weren't exaggerating by much. These things were at least the size of toilet paper squares off of a toilet paper roll. They were huge. So we are definitely seeing the effects from a cooler summer and a warmer Arctic in the fall winter time, where we get the increased water vapor in our atmosphere, more snow in the winter type scenario. Plus you have to add in the cosmic rays influx that we have in the atmosphere, making these particles like super magnets to absorb as many water droplets as possible. And here is the result of an atmosphere that is riddled with cosmic rays, highly charged particles. This is not a coincidence. We've seen snowfalls like this in 2009, 2010 during the last peak of a minimum. But this is the crazy part. We're only starting the minimum in 2019. We have been on the way to the bottom now for quite some time. And this cycle has just only begun. It's cycle 25. It's slated to start somewhere around the middle of 2019. So we're not even technically at the bottom yet of this current minimum. With all this snow talk, I wanted to show an article off of What's Up With That. I've been talking about it for the past couple weeks, and I gotta be honest with you, the snow chances for this month are falling like a rock. This is what we look like for December 27th, 2018. Now, the folks in the upper elevations in the Northwest, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana, you guys will see significant snowfall. But when you get to the Dakotas, Montana, and Minnesota, you're talking an inch or two. Same thing with parts of western New York and western PA, northeast Ohio. Maybe, just maybe, if we're lucky, we'll see an inch of snow on the ground. So chances of a white Christmas at this point, in my opinion, have dropped. But we'll read on here. Minnesota, Maine, upstate New York, the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, practically anywhere in Idaho, and of course the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada mountains. These are parts of the lower 48 where weather history suggests you want to be if you're looking for the best chance of a white Christmas. The map at the right shows historic probability of there being at least 1 inch of snow on the ground in the lower 48 on December 25th, based on the latest 1981-2010 U.S. climate normals from NOAA, the big fat liars. And the background of the map shows interpolated values from all locations. Interpolating meaning estimating unknown values using known values and physical relationships, such as the way the temperature is known to change with altitude. So dark gray areas show places where the probability is less than 10%. Sorry, West Coast, Gulf Coast, Deep South. White shows probabilities greater than 90%. So let's take a look at our good old handy dandy map here. We'll zoom in. And this gives us a better idea of what we're looking at when we are talking about the probability. They said the white is the more likely area. So it looks like we're going to be looking at parts of northern Minnesota, the Northeast, upstate New York. Actually looks like it has a chance, not a huge chance, but a chance nonetheless. Let's zoom in here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm the hometown hero. Take a look. See what our chances here in the Northeast. And yeah, so there's a chance that we could see for us up here in the upstate part of New York. A slight chance, but nonetheless, the further upstate you go, the better chance of snow. And then as we get into other parts of the Northeast, especially Maine, those chances go way up. So we're really talking about the north latitudes. Buffalo, Niagara Falls, a very slight chance. Northeast Ohio, a better chance than the central North Ohio and Northwest Ohio. Now, Michigan, the best spot here, it looks like Traverse City, Interlaken. You guys are definitely going to have a good chance at some snow for Christmas. Ironwood, Rhinelander, Wausau, Iron Mountain, Marquette, Hancock, definitely areas. Duluth, Ely, Superior, Croxton, Devils Lake, Grand Forks, Minot, Bismarck, Jamestown, Moorhead, and Fargo. Definitely good chances for some snow for Christmas. And then, of course, we get out of here to the upper terrain here in the northwest of Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Salt Lake City, the obvious spots that we will see snow in the Rockies as well. Slight chances for major cities like Denver, Kansas City. You don't have much of a chance, if at all, to see any snow on the ground. And guys, I'll go over the GFS article or the GFS model that shows this. And I'll tell you this much right now. It's changed so much. Who knows what it'll do in the next 10 days. I'll be honest with you. It's changed every night that I've looked at it. Leave the link in the description. And I got a couple videos to show you, starting with this one. This one's a short commercial, and I'll go ahead and play it for you guys real fast.
Every 500, a once in 500 year storm should happen every 500 years, right? Fact is, there have been 26 in the last decade. All
right, let's start that over again, guys. This is important what he's saying. A 500-year storm should happen a once in every 500 years. Okay, let's keep that in mind first. Now let's play it.
A once in 500 year storm should happen every 500 years, right? Fact is, there have been 26 in the last decade. Allstate is adapting with drones to assess home damage sooner. And if a flying object damages your car, you can snap a photo and get your claim processed in hours, not days. Plus, Allstate can pay your claim in minutes. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
Now, I agree with Dr. Roy Spencer. He states here that Allstate should pull this ad and apologize for misleading the public. He says here, I've been meaning to comment about this TV ad for Allstate Insurance, which enraged me at first time I saw it. Allstate knows better. The insurance business deals with probability and statistics. And they knew this was a lie when they put this ad together. And he's highlighting this statement here. Once in a 500-year storm should happen once every 500 years, right? The fact is, there have been 26 in the last decade. Now, here's where Dr. Roy Spencer has a problem. Setting aside the fact that we don't have enough statistics to say anything meaningful about what happens over 500 years, hydrologists prefer to stick to 100 years as justified when talking about rare events. Allstate knows very well that such statistics refer to the repeat period of the same location, not for, say, the whole United States. It is not unusual for once in a 100-year weather events to occur more than once and maybe several times each year somewhere in the United States. I consider this to be false advertising because Allstate knows better and is purposely misleading the public to make more money. Here is the map here since 2010 of the so-called 500-year storms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. These are the 26 once in 500-year storms. And I get where Dr. Roy Spencer has a beef with this. The commercial is misleading because it makes it sound like that we're seeing more and more 500-year storms recently. And my point to this, and I'm sure this is what he shares as well, is that this is not fair to say that we're seeing more 500-year storm events. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Solar cycles, they happen every 11 years. So these 500-year storm events are technically, Allstate is saying it's a cycle thing. Every 500 years we have this crazy storm. But there's 48 states in the lower continental U.S., so that means 48 states in a period of probably 10 to 15 years, are going to experience their once in 500 year storm activity. And what's misleading about this is that the commercial is trying to say that the increase in climate change should be of concern when we're just hitting a cycle of these storms that have hit that once in 500 years. It's now this time for this area to have it, and this time for that area to have it, and this time for that area to have it. It happens in cycles. So, you know, some of you may think that we're reaching or picking on Allstate here, but the truth is, and the thing that really kind of boils my blood, and I'm sure that this is what got Mr. Roy Spencer, was this little comment here right at the end of the commercial. Listen here.
Are you in good hands?
Well, not that one, obviously, but
now that you know the truth.
Now that you know the truth. Now that you know the truth. And then, you know, predictive programming here. Once he says, now that you know the truth, the sky clears and a rainbow appears. Because, behold, Allstate has given you the truth. That these once in a 500-year events are happening all the time. And that means we should get more insurance because it's going to continue to happen. I mean, this is misleading. This is just a sick, disgusting way for a major corporation like Allstate, who doesn't need to do this. These guys have been in the insurance business for years. They are top notch. They don't need to scare people into buying homeowners insurance, do they? Is this a sign that Allstate's having a bad year? I mean, honestly, all the insurance companies are probably having a bad year, considering the kind of storms that we've seen the last 2 or 3 years. So, interesting things to watch here in these advertisements. Stay awake, people. That's all I'm saying. Dr. Roy Spencer also believes you should stay awake. And here is the second video. Now, this is old, but I wanted to touch base with this tonight because everybody else has. Let's go over the monologues of a liar.
It's hard to capture the astonishment that the...
Wiping the sweat off the brow, the first indication that, boy, how am I going to pull this giant lie off?
The experts in the science of ice felt...
the experts in the science of ice, you know, that department.
When they saw this minimum in 2005, which meant that the amount of ice that had melted, it's been roughly the size of the continental United States, minus an area roughly the size of Arizona. Nothing against Arizona. But the amount that melted...
He's hilarious.
...in 2005 was equivalent to an area covering everything east of the Mississippi River in the United States. Then, when the real shock to the scientists came was in 2007, when this happened.
I wish we could see this.
Their phrase was, it fell off a cliff. And then the extra amount that melted was this much. Now this covers the area of ice. It does not cover the volume of the ice, and Bob Carell referred to this. The U.S. Naval Postgraduate School has a team that integrates the U.S. Navy's nuclear submarines that go under the ice cap and satellite measurements that are calibrated to work with it. And based on that, they said actually 2008 had a smaller minimum, probably, than 2007. And these are figures that are fresh. I don't know if they've been, I don't know when they were released, but
Okay, so before we finish this out, let's go ahead and bring up 2007. And let's bring up 2008. Now, I want you to notice something about where these numbers are. Let's take out all these other lines here, okay? Now, he said that 2007 and 2008, especially 2008, was worse than 2007. On contrary, here's 2007, all right? And here's 2008. So it looks like 2008 and 2007 started off at the same worst point and grew in 2008 actually had way more growth and showed more consistency in 2008 than 2007. So here we go, a politician who just is not paying attention to the data and already misquoting himself in this video.
I just got him yesterday.
Yeah, I just got him yesterday, my ass.
From Dr. Vaclav Maslowski at the Naval Postgraduate School, and this is the volumetric record of the ice. And some of the models suggest to Dr. Maslowski that there is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years. And Bob used a figure of 2030, and the volumetric analysis leads this Dr. Maslowski to make that projection. We will find out.
You're damn right we will. And I'll tell you something right now too. Let's compare 2007 and 2008. So if we had to go on the short term, Mr. Gore has some minor success with the numbers that we've seen this year for 2018. They are lower than what they were in 2007. Now, my correlation that I'm going to throw in here is, let's get 2008 out of here. In 2018, 2007, low numbers before a solar minimum kicked in. 2009 started around that time as well. And then the 2010 ice growth. So my point I'm making here is that right before the heart of the 2009-2010 winter, which was also during the peak of a minimum, we saw substantial ice growth from 2007. So does that mean in 2019 and 2020 that we're going to see our graph change? If this is a low point, then does that mean if we're going to go off of trends, I mean, compared to what I'm looking at, this tells me that when we see 2019's ice starting at the same point as 2018, but is it possibly going to be more growth and closer to the shaded area in 2019? And what does that mean for 2020? Even more ice growth. So, Gore's talking about, you see how he paints a careful picture about 75% chance that at some point in the summertime, the Arctic will be free of ice. He didn't come out and just say it would be ice-free, that's it, water world, here we come. He danced around a specific date, which, or in a specific amount as well. A guy who's just a politician, who is a puppet for the man-made global warming carbon tax and all that, he should never give. And that's where that community should be like going, oh my God, why is he predicting anything? He's not a scientist. He's not a climatologist. He's just a puppet that's trying to get more money for this movement. He failed at his presidential bid. People laughed at him afterwards. He needed something to get going again. And here, climate change, made him millions. But that video to me was important because he misspoke several times. He looked silly by trying to make predictions that he was way off on. And the ice growth to this point today, I mean, I know this is just for this year. Of course it's going to be fuller. I'm not making the point that, this was a lot lower than this in July. Well, of course it was. It was summer months in July. What I'm saying is that we haven't hit the calendar winter yet. And if you guys look at this ice extent, the entire area where the orange line, we almost have a full capacity of ice right now in the Arctic. Yes, it's young, new ice. I get that. But it's there, and it's frozen up there, regardless of the warming anomalies that we've had this year. To some people who are trying to use that as, well, the Arctic's warming, so there's no way we're going through global cooling. But like I said in the last show, we talked about Alaska and the Arctic during the Maunder minimum saw periods of heat during winter months. So this is not entirely rare to see mild temperatures in the north during the winter, especially during a period of time with such lower solar activity. When you got things like the TCI that's dropping like a rock right now at 31 billion watts. The record is 20 billion watts. We're 11 billion watts off from that. And we've dropped, listen guys, I know that sounds like not that much, 11 billion watts. But since we started following this, it started off at 45 billion watts. So we've lost 14 billion watts in just a month. Food for thought. Leave the link in the description. Got another video I want to watch. This one's a little bit longer. This one's about 5 minutes. This is important as well. Found a couple of videos tonight. I figure this is the best way sometimes than sitting here reading you these droned out articles at times. But nonetheless, show you where, Mark Morano, first of all, this guy is a regular on Fox Business. And the talk show host doesn't even consider Fox News as mainstream media. Well, I don't know about you folks. You might have to have a special package on DirecTV to get this channel, but I still consider it mainstream media, and so does Mark Morano. But let's go ahead and check this interview out, guys.
Back to my editorial, top of the hour. My statement is, voters are not willing to pay to fix climate change. And they're certainly not willing to fix climate change whilst the world's largest carbon polluter, China, does absolutely nothing about it.
Now, and that's an important thing too. And this leads me to my point about what's happening in France. There is more to what's happening in France than just a carbon tax. But the carbon tax is what got the ball rolling with this protest. And the biggest thing that I see the problem with this Paris Treaty is that places like France, where the middle class is now struggling with this tax, poverty is already a problem with the lower class. Now it's going to be a bigger problem. And yet we are now, I read you guys an article a few days ago where China is silently opening up coal plants to help suffice the brutal cold that they're going to get and the energy crisis that they could face without coal. And we already know the pollution problems that China has. So here's point number one that this interviewer gives a great point right off the bat. And he's saying this, as French civilians, why should we pay more taxes when we do less to our environment? And countries and places like China, they're not doing anything about it. And they're adding more man-made carbon to the atmosphere. So that's the first argument that a normal, logical thinking person will have when it comes to these climate taxes.
Let's bring in Climate Depot's Mark Morano. Look, I'm making 2 points, Mark. Number one, voters won't pay more for energy now to fix a problem down the road. Number two, voters will not sacrifice now whilst China does nothing. Where am I going? Are you with me on this?
Yeah, yes, completely. I mean, from a political, economic, climate, and cost-benefit analysis point of view, you are 100% correct. What's happened now is we've seen the face of climate tax failure, and it is French President Emmanuel Macron. He is the face. He has made himself the poster boy of the UN Paris Climate Pact, and he's told middle-class French who are facing skyrocketing fuel taxes from his policies that they can wait for public transit, that they can carpool, and that basically they have to be in it to save the world because what they're doing is noble, and none of the French are buying it. And that.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump, or Barack Obama for that much, had come out and did a presidential announcement to the country that, all right, listen, no more driving your cars. You guys need to ride the bus, take a bike, walk. Enough's enough. We're not going to make these drastic changes by turning off the lights at 7 p.m. on a Monday night football game on Earth Day. We're going to have to shut it down. I mean, and that's basically what the French president is telling his people. Look, we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough to lessen the carbon, so we're just going to lock this down. And the unfairness to this is like they're saying here, China, they do nothing. And they are probably the number one contributor to man-made emissions.
That rebellion is spreading.
In my editorial at the top of the hour, I quoted from the Wall Street Journal today an editorial about climate change in the French. And the last few lines noted that NASA, North American Space Administration, using satellites, shows that the world is a lot greener than it used to be because...
That's what CO2 does.
There's more carbon, and that's plant food. I mean, that's kind of the other side of climate change, isn't it? Is that a positive side to it?
Oh, absolutely. Peer-reviewed studies are showing the greening of planet Earth, including deserts. And in my book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change, I quote Nobel Prize-winning scientists and others who say that the Earth is in a CO2 famine right now. In other words, CO2 historically, geologically speaking, is low.
So I wanted to emphasize this part of the interview because I've talked about this over a year now, where NASA has come out and said the only effect that we can prove that CO2 has on our planet is that it is a greening effect. So this correlates to what NASA's been saying since late 2017, if not earlier, but I first saw it come out of NASA's mouth late last year.
So the idea that the United Nations can say we face a catastrophe 100 years from now unless we sacrifice today, no one buys it scientifically, no one buys it instinctively on a human level. And we have protests now in Canada, we have Brazil canceling the UN climate summit. A lot of this credit goes to President Donald Trump, who by pulling the United States out of the Paris Agreement is causing a domino effect. At this summit I just got back from in Poland, the UN climate summit, we had Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Russia, all refusing to sign on to this alarmist UN report, which came out in October. So this is major progress for people who care about energy security and sovereignty and are against the UN agenda.
Now, I take no position. I'm not, in my editorials, I'm not arguing that, yes, climate change exists, yes, it's human. I don't take a position. But what's your position? Is the planet warming? And if it is warming, is it the result of human activity? Where do you come from?
It's very simple. Humans can impact the climate, but any impact they've had is indistinguishable from the past. In other words, you cannot distinguish a human concept. I have chapters in my book on this, quoting former United Nations scientists who've now turned against the UN, making that point. And I would go further, even if you believe we face a climate crisis, if we had to rely on the United Nations and EPA through climate taxes to save us, we would all be doomed, because they admit that their solutions would have no impact on the climate. The UN Paris Agreement was supposed to save us. The UN now freely admits that just 3 years from that is completely inadequate according to their latest predictions. So this is a political and economic movement, has nothing to do with the actual climate. They're talking about central transformation. That's what the UN climate chief has actually said. We seek.
So that's amazing, first of all, that 3 years from the Paris Treaty climate, that the UN is now freely admitting that this treaty is not going to do anything to impact any kind of reversal. And maybe they might be admitting that because they know that man doesn't affect the climate in the first place. But interesting enough here to see Mark Morano take a more political stance about climate change. He was clearly asked, which side do you stand on? That gave him the opportunity to come out and say, listen, I believe that these climate changes are a result of natural cycles. So a little disheartened that Mark didn't take the chance to go for the gusto there. This is not the first time I've seen him in an interview where I felt like he could have been a little bit more specific about where exactly he stood. But to his defense, I understand. Because the minute you start favoring the science that's not the consensus or the mainstream media consensus, that's when you start getting blacklisted. That's when you start losing your credibility. That's when you become attacked by these AGW and leftist groups. So, Mark, keep fighting the good fight. I think you said a lot of things that if people follow our channel and other channels like ours, that we read between the lines, we hear what you're saying. And just pointing out the fact that the UN has low confidence in this Paris Treaty Climate Pact. And they're saying now that this really isn't going to do anything. This is just going to cost governments around the world more money. And this idea that we're going to see, and from the Al Gore video, where he says that we're going to have a bigger problem with the iceless caps by 2030s. Guys, I don't know how to stress this one. If we're going to go through a cycle 25 before we get to the super grand solar minimum, which Valentina Zarkova, as far as I'm concerned, is suggesting after 2030, that's when the real cold starts. That's when the real problems start. Right now is just an appetizer. We're only getting warmed up, no pun intended, to what's to come by the time we hit the super grand minimum. Some are still just suggesting that we're going to enter this super grand minimum by 2020. But there are some things about solar cycle 25 that I like to carry with me. And the one big fact that I like to carry about why I believe we're at least going to see at least one more, it could be 2 more cycles, but I'm really going to stand firm on this one cycle thing. And that was the 8.2 solar flare that was produced, not Earth-facing, but away from Earth. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this back in 2017 is because a sun that's entering in a grand solar minimum should not have that kind of power before a grand minimum to produce a solar flare that strong. So just something to think about, guys. And forgive me for not remembering where I got that information from, but I know it's probably from someone in the GSM community that I speak with on a regular basis. But it is, to me, that makes sense when I hear that. Because a grand minimum is supposedly a period of time where we don't see, if at all, any sunspots, let alone an 8.2 X-class flare. So just some food for thought. And again, Mark Morano, who is doing the work of the good, trying to install that. I think first he's trying to get people to stop believing in this tax stuff that's going to divert climate catastrophe. That's the first myth that we want to bust up first, is this fear about climate catastrophe. Then once we get that myth busted, it'll be easier to convince people and other scientists, along with people who are already convinced, that we're cooling. The proof is right in front of our faces right now. Our temperatures from drroyspencer.com have not risen above the 0.33 above baseline, I believe, here in most of 2018. Even during September, October, November last year in 2017, we saw temperature rises up to 0.63 above baseline in the month of October for 2017 before we started falling back down towards the 0.20 above baseline. This year has been a different story. It's been consistently cool. It did rise a little bit in August and September, but not that much. Not that much at all. 0.43 maybe, I think was as high as it got. But for the most part, it stayed in the 20s and the 30s all year above baseline. So 2018 definitely cooled off from 2017, and 17 definitely cooled off from 16. So we'll continue to watch this, guys. I'll have the link in the description if you want to take a in-depth look at what is going on with that article, and I'll go ahead and refresh this one more time. This is a current look at Oregon and Washington. You guys are now getting that heavy rain. It's well inland. Parts of Northern California also seeing some light shower activity. Other than that, guys, some showers across Texas near Fort Worth. The Northeast seeing some light showers right now. That's going to show up as a possibility of freezing rain mixed with snow showers, as temperatures are now just cold enough to start to see any kind of frozen precipitation. All right, here is our GFS outlook through the next several days. We're going to deal with that storm in the northwest. That's going to hang around for a couple of days, actually. We go into Wednesday, it starts to break up. We get a low-pressure system coming out of the Gulf once again. Parts of the south and the southeast that don't need the rain are going to receive more rain on Friday, December 24th. Now, the 21st. This storm is going to be rain to start with in the East Coast, in the Northeast. And as we get closer to Christmas Eve, we see a cold front starting to change that rain to snow in western New York, Erie, Pennsylvania, Buffalo. By Saturday evening, you will have snowfall. Same thing with upstate New York, parts of Maine. We'll see light snow showers. And then in the northwest, you got another low-pressure system dropping rain and snow on the higher elevations, and that's it. We go into Christmas Day, more rain in the northwest, heavy rain from Northern California. You guys are getting pounded out there, wave after wave of storms. Christmas Eve, we might see some lake effect snow near Watertown, New York, Syracuse area. But that's it, guys. Christmas Day, I'm sorry to speak. The Northwest, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, California, and the higher elevations of Washington and Oregon, you guys have the best chances right now for snow to be on the ground for Christmas Day. So the likelihood of a white Christmas, there's not even any kind of accumulating snow, except for this little system that moves through here on the 22nd and 23rd. But the question is, are the temperatures going to stay cold enough to Christmas? Because there's been a lot of conflicting information coming in on the GFS. We get a little bit of a warm up, and then it cools back down again. And then right here on the 26th of December, we see another low pressure system as those high temperatures once again ridge up into the northeast, far into the northeast. The next low pressure system will come in as rain on the 28th of December. Now this one could be a bad one. As we get through the 29th, the cold front behind it in the northeast, you could see some heavy snow in Maine. And then on the 30th, going into New Year's Eve, we have a chance, and this is what they call an Alberta Clipper, for the northeast Ohio, Pennsylvania, all of New York. January 1st, I do see a good chance of some January New Year's Day snow in the northeast, bringing much colder air to the area and to the region for Ohio in the northeast of the United States. And now we start to see that classic pattern of the jet stream. And it looks like we will settle into much colder air for the start of 2019 for much of the United States. Another low pressure system forming here in the Midwest, in the heartland of the country. I should say the Central Plains, not the Midwest. And let's take a look at our temperature outlook for the next several days. We will see a mild outbreak here in the east, but by Christmas Day, that mild weather will stay south as that Arctic air from the north is trying to push its way into the United States. Now look at this. Some Christmas surprise the day after. We get like a January thaw here in Texas. Of course, you guys are used to 65, 68 degrees on December 27th. Places in Ohio, though, getting to 46 degrees. That's warm. That's balmy. 56 in Cincinnati on December 27th. Look at that. Possibly hitting the mid-60s, guys, by the end of the month December in the Ohio Valley and parts of the Northeast. The GFS is suggesting a very unseasonably warm up towards the end of December. And you guys can see in Canada here on December 30th, look at this. This cold air is going to push and impose its will upon parts of the Northeast and the Midwest of the United States on the 1st of January and beyond. So this trough right here looks a lot like our typical pattern from the winter. The warm air all the way through the middle of the country in the north, the northwest with the cold air, the northeast with the cold air. So January is going to start off like a typical January for the northeast and the northwest. Ohio and parts of Central America, you guys, or Central United States I should say, are going to be in for a little bit above average temperatures for this time of year. So interesting to continue to watch. The forecast changes almost daily, guys, especially the snowfall. I already showed you what we're looking for the month of through December 27th, and that's not very good chances in the Northeast like we thought in the original. For November, we had half the United States covered in snow, at least 3 to 5 inches. December has not been the case. So, like the article that I read to you guys earlier, is it possible that we're going to see a very, very snowy January since we were snow lacking for most of December in a lot of parts of the United States? Only time will tell. Taking a look at the El Nino 3-4 region, guys, this thing is not consistent whatsoever. A lot more 26s and 25s on there. 27 is the extreme temperature reading for the El Nino 3-4. But look at this. Now, guys, I want to let you know, 28 degrees Celsius is the threshold for El Nino. If you took these numbers, 27, 29, 27, 27, 26, 26, 25, and averaged those all up, they wouldn't even hit 28 degrees Celsius. So I'm confused on why we're looking at temperature readings like this. where it says here we are at a 0.571 above baseline. And that looks like that peak is slowly starting to turn the corner to start going down again in temperatures. I've always saw this graph as a little higher, and thanks to another friend of mine in the GSM community, he would always point out that the graph details don't match this. And I have to agree with him on this too. Right now, they don't match this either. So, Noah's still confident, 90% confident, that we're going to see an El Nino. Okay, you say so. I mean, I can't dispute that anymore because they blocked me. So, whatever. I'll do what I want. That's pretty much all I have tonight. Mari, did you want to say hello to the folks in the chat?
Hello,
Thank
everyone
them for
in the chat.
tuning in.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I would like to first thank Anthony and a user called Zero Tolerance for their super chat donation.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you very much. Leora hollers. Our channel has more facts on it than any other channels she's seen with the topic. I thought that was a nice comment.
Thank you very much.
We really do take seriously vetting the information, not sensationalizing it, just sort of calling it how we're seeing it and vetting things. We're very thorough with that, aren't we, Jake? You don't.
That's our number one thing here.
It's so important to us. The integrity of the topic is like a number one thing for us.
We don't believe in fake news. We don't like fake news.
He does a good Trump, guys, doesn't he? Do it again, Jake.
It's bigly fake news.
See? Great. There's talk of people wanting us to do a GSM parody, throwing around ideas with the 12 days of Christmas. Then we were joking. We have a couple people talking about Planet X and Nibiru in the chat, as always.
Oh boy.
It's one of my favorite topics.
Watch out for the Anunnaki.
But I put the Blue Kachina link.
Oh boy.
In the
chew on that
chat.
one.
That's always a lot of people don't realize we have a Nibiru Christmas album.
A debunking Nibiru.
Yes,
Christmas
we don't
album.
believe in Nibiru. No. I'm sorry, folks, to disappoint.
This is a known Nibiru site.
But we do have a laugh about the Blue Kachina and Nibiru. So if you're not offended too easily, go ahead and listen. So that's all. Rob's in here, and he mentioned an interesting fact. I guess it's in the seasteading book he sent me that he's been harping on me to get my things going with that. But the only difference between chlorophyll and blood is the blood core is iron and chlorophyll core is magnesium. Interesting little fact there, Jake.
Chlorophyll? More like borophyll.
Oh, shoot, Jake.
Just kidding,
Well, anyway,
Rob.
it's always a pleasure. I'm going to put all the links to our chat, so when we're offline, you could go into Discord, blah, blah, blah. It'll be pinned in the comments below.
Sorry about the chlorophyll comment. It's not every day I get to quote a Billy Madison line in a Grand Solar Minimum broadcast.
Well done, Jake.
So with that being said, we want to thank
Monday.
Happy Monday. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please like and share and subscribe. Check us out, Patreon. Guys, we will be back Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Same time, guys. Same channel. Until then, we will talk soon. Take care, everyone.